My mother's name is Ada, but I talked to her, Reese. No longer involved with Cedric St. John after 1887. The Ada that he's talking about later isn't my mother. She was already married to Abraham Rubinstein, the man who raised me by that time. She's loyal to him, always has been. Dr. Rubinstein looked to Reese in realization. She saw a spark in his eyes, but didn't reach the same conclusion as he did. What does this mean, then? Your uncle, rather, our Uncle Stephen, made a mistake. Cedric St. John romanced two different women named Ada. There's likely another missing sibling that's unaccounted for. If he's a man, he likely served in the war, Reese said, turning over the grim possibility in her mind. This brother, if he indeed was a brother to could very well already be dead. He's older than me by a few years if we go by Cedric's journals. He's also younger than I am. We've established that I'm Cedric's eldest child, that we can prove. The second Ada's child was likely in his early to mid-20s, the war, for I turned 30 in the middle of it. The doctor and the heiress looked at each other for a long time, brother and sister, both having served in that pivotal war, both having skirted death in their own time. Dr. Rubinstein, call me Noah, I must insist. I'll never change my name, John, even if that wretched man is my biological father. I owe my life to my mother and Abraham Rubinstein. I'm not about to spit on everything Abe's done for me and claim the name St. John. Noah, you remind me of Uncle Stephen, Reese said, and he couldn't help but hear the sadness in her voice. Being one so devoted to the truth sometimes did take a toll, especially when it seemed like the world celebrated people's wrongs. The doctor had pitied Stephen St. John, who was now an old man, quietly retired on his family estate, the anti-war parliamentary who had tried for years upon his election in 1914 to bring England's men home. When he couldn't manage that, he led trade agreements and sat on committees to try to fairly parcel out rations between the civilians and the troops. It's a compliment of high honor, let me assure you. Oh, Uncle Stephen well. At least you're nothing like Cedric, Reese continued. You don't call him father? No, I can't think of him like one. He never did anything kindly or fatherly towards me. Life was nearly ruined by his neglect. If anything, Uncle Stephen is the only man I consider like a father. But you've met Cedric St. John, then? Oh, yes, a few times. Mostly he came to harass Uncle Stephen about money. The last time I saw him, I was 16. I happened to be home from the Ladies' Academy when Cedric slithered in to demand my Uncle Stephen pay his debts. Disgusted, but unsurprised to hear this, Noah turned his concentration back to the papers Reese laid out before him. He had heard of the St. Johns, but never did he imagine that he was one of them. Who was his uncle, had asked if anyone knew about the whereabouts of his missing nephews and nieces. Now that Cedric had safely been dead for several years, the trail was growing ever colder. Reese had invited her eldest brother to the family manor to help her go over her papers. Georgiana, that was the name of the second woman in the journal, no last name given. She had been an unmarried debutante at the time of her affair with Cedric St. John. She'd be a society matron if she was still alive. The first Ada was Noah's mother. Cedric's descriptions of his young love confirmed this. Ada was mentioned after Georgiana had left Cedric for a prosperous Lord M. The rest of the name Cedric refused to write out of habitual laziness or a jealous rage. Reese could not be sure. His former lover wanted to marry a wealthy man, and she knew a second son like Cedric wouldn't have any financial freedom. He'd always be kissing up to his uptight brother Stephen for what amounted to spare change. So a great house may have a cuckoo as its heir, the doctor concluded from their late father's writing. Reese, I believe I might even know which one.